You've been swallowing their words for years. Every insult, every casual opinion, every label disguised as truth, you've let it dissolve beneath your skin. Their voices echo inside you like a slow infection, reshaping your thoughts until you mistake their noise for your conscience. You wear their judgments like invisible chains, call them personality, and wonder why your silence feels like suffocation. You think you know who you are, but your identity is just a collage of borrowed sound. The world feeds on your openness, 1,000 tongues rewriting your self-image until nothing original remains. When you absorb their words, you stop being a mind and become an echo. But beneath that echo, something ancient still stirs. The raw, unfiltered self waiting to speak again. It watches, silent, buried under decades of imitation. And if you dare to listen, not to them, but to the tremor beneath your own heartbeat, you'll realize the most terrifying truth of all. You were never their reflection. You were the mirror that made their shadows visible. Number 1, the silent infection. It doesn't begin with a scream, it begins with a whisper. One word from someone you trusted, one opinion that slipped beneath your awareness and planted itself in the soil of your mind. You didn't question it, you absorbed it. That's how infections spread. Jung called it introjection. When the psyche swallows what isn't its own and digests it as truth. Over time, these words grow roots, weaving through your thoughts until they bloom as your identity. You're too much. You'll never change. You should be like them. Each phrase pierces deep, dissolving into your bloodstream until your emotions obey them. You stop responding to life and start reacting to programming. You think you're thinking, but it's their voice echoing through your neurons. This is how the mind is colonized. Not by force, but by repetition. You begin to edit yourself before they can. You shrink your truth, distort your tone, mimic their rhythm to avoid rejection. Slowly, your essence becomes a host for other people's expectations. You lose your raw edges, your wildness, your unpredictability, the very things that made you you. The infection thrives in silence, disguised as belonging. Every time you seek validation, you feed it. Every time you doubt your instinct, you water it. The voice inside you becomes foreign, an amalgam of borrowed sound. And one day, when you finally sit alone and listen to your thoughts, you'll realize the voice judging you isn't yours at all. It's theirs, speaking through your fear. The infection has no cure until you name it, until you look directly at the words that poisoned you and whisper them back into the void they came from. That's when healing begins, not by replacing the noise, but by remembering the silence beneath it. Because beneath their echo lies your original frequency, untouched, waiting. And if you dare to reclaim it, you'll remember what it feels like to think in your own language again. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 2, the weight of their voices. You start to feel it, the weight. Not on your shoulders, but inside your thoughts, pressing down like invisible gravity. Each borrowed word becomes a stone in your psyche, and now you carry them everywhere. You speak, and their tone leaks through. You decide, and their judgment whispers over your choice. What you call your personality is often a museum of other people's ghosts. Jung would say your ego is a fragile architecture, built from everything you've unconsciously accepted to avoid rejection. You became a collage of defense mechanisms, smiling when broken, quiet when angry, agreeable when burning inside. Their voices didn't just shape your language, they reprogrammed your emotions. You feel guilt for existing beyond their approval. You seek peace, yet crave validation from the very minds that buried your authenticity. This is how the collective devours the individual, softly, beautifully, with praise and advice. You become fluent in their expectations and illiterate in your own truth. The voices multiply. Parents, teachers, lovers, society, all speaking through your nervous system until silence feels like guilt and self-expression feels like rebellion. But rebellion is the first symptom of healing. When the psyche begins to reject the infection, it trembles. You'll feel resistance, like your mind is tearing against its own skin. That's the sound of the false self cracking open. Don't run. Witness it. Let their echoes collapse. Because once you've heard your inner silence beneath the noise, their words lose gravity. They'll still speak, but they'll pass through you like wind through a hollow bone. You'll stop absorbing, you'll start observing. The weight will begin to lift, not because they changed, but because you finally realize the truth. You were never meant to carry their words, only your own. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 3, the mirror of the shadow. You think their words are about you. You think their judgments are personal, but they're not. They're mirrors. Every accusation they throw, every subtle critique that slices into your confidence, it's not a reflection of who you are, but of who they can't bear to face within themselves. Jung called it the shadow, the dark twin of the psyche, made of everything one refuses to acknowledge. When you absorb their words, you're swallowing their shadow. You become their unconscious scapegoat, the vessel for their hidden shame. They condemn your intensity because they've buried their own. They mock your sensitivity because it terrifies them to feel. And you, in your openness, mistake their projection for truth. You carry their darkness as if it were your own sin. This is how the mind is tricked. You become host to ghosts that were never yours. The shadow doesn't only live in them, though. It lives in you, too. Every time you pretend you're fine, every time you silence your anger or disguise your need for control, your shadow watches, patient, waiting. And sometimes the words that wound you the most are the ones that point directly at your disowned self. The only way out of this maze is through recognition. You must become the mirror, not the reflection. You must look into the distortion and say, yes, this too is me. Because when you own your shadow, no one can use it against you. Their words lose power because they no longer touch anything you hide. The projection dissolves. You stop being the target and start being the truth. This is the silent power of awareness. You no longer absorb what is not yours. You witness, you integrate, you transcend. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 4, the war inside the mind. You've been fighting a war you didn't know you enlisted in. Every opinion you ever absorbed has taken sides inside your skull. The mind is a battlefield, and you are both the soldier and the soil. One side speaks with the voice of others, the noise of control, of conformity, of fear disguised as love. The other side, faint but unyielding, whispers your truth, raw, inconvenient, unpolished. Jung knew this war well, the tension between the persona and the self. The persona wears masks to survive the world. The self burns masks to survive itself. The conflict is endless until awareness steps in. You feel the explosions in your chest, doubt detonating against instinct, guilt strangling desire, logic stabbing emotion. You tell yourself you're overthinking, but it's not overthinking. It's inner warfare. You've built mental armor out of politeness, boundaries out of shame, and strategies out of silence. But armor doesn't heal. It only hides the wounds until the psyche bleeds in secret. You think you're protecting yourself from pain, but you're protecting the infection. The false self thrives in conflict. It feeds on your confusion. But every war has a moment when the soldier realizes what they're fighting for. That moment comes when you stop trying to win and start trying to see. You begin to recognize which thoughts belong to you and which were planted to keep you obedient. You'll feel resistance. It's the ego's last defense before surrender. But surrender here doesn't mean defeat, it means alignment. The war ends not in victory, but in clarity. When you stand still long enough, you'll hear both sides dissolve into silence, and in that silence, the real you emerges. Untouched, unbroken, waiting beneath the smoke. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 5, the death of the authentic self. There comes a point when the noise wins. You stop resisting, stop asking, stop feeling. The war inside you doesn't end. It just goes quiet. That's how death sounds, silence pretending to be peace. You've been rewritten so many times that your reflection no longer recognizes you. Your laughter sounds rehearsed, your sadness feels borrowed, even your rage has been edited to fit the room. You no longer live, you perform. Jung warned of this. When the ego is inflated with artificial meaning, the the self retreats into shadow. And when that happens, the mind becomes a mausoleum filled with other people's ghosts. Every role you play, the strong one, the kind one, the calm one, becomes a coffin. You walk through your days embalmed in acceptance, but untouched by authenticity. The death of the authentic self isn't dramatic, it's invisible. It happens when you start needing permission to be real. When you say, "I'm fine," so often that the words bury your soul. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the weight of your adaptations, something stirs, faint, almost imperceptible. The true self never dies. It waits. It watches as the false layers decay, as the mind grows weary of pretending. This death isn't punishment, it's purification. The psyche kills what's fake to make space for what's true. You'll grieve the identities that dissolve, the obedient child, the people pleaser, the forgiver of everyone but yourself. Their loss will ache like withdrawal because you've been addicted to your own mass. But beneath that pain lies the first taste of freedom. When the false self dies, it doesn't take you with it. It frees you to begin again. It strips you naked, forces you to face the silence you feared. And in that silence, something eternal begins to breathe. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 6 of the psychological rebirth. Rebirth doesn't arrive with light. It begins in the dark. It happens when you've been emptied, when the last illusion has crumbled, and you sit in the ruins of your old identity with nothing left to defend. The silence that once terrified you now feels sacred. You breathe, and for the first time, the air doesn't belong to anyone else. Jung called this the path of individuation, the merging of what was hidden with what has been conscious. It's not about becoming new, it's about becoming whole. You begin to hear faint echoes of yourself beneath the static. Your thoughts feel raw, unedited, honest. You no longer repeat what you've been told. You begin to remember every part of you that was condemned. The anger, the longing, the hunger for truth returns home. They no longer feel dangerous, they feel divine. The psyche reorganizes itself around authenticity, not approval. You feel small at first, fragile, like a newborn learning to see. But this fragility isn't weakness, it's clarity. You start to recognize that healing isn't addition, it's subtraction. You are not becoming more. You are shedding what was never you. The world still speaks, but now you listen from a distance. Their voices no longer pierce, they pass. You sense the invisible boundary of your own energy forming, your mind becoming a temple instead of a battlefield. You don't chase validation anymore. You radiate truth. This is the moment Jung described when the self begins to rise. Quiet, steady, luminous. It doesn't shout, it simply exists. You've crossed the threshold between imitation and awareness, and what awaits is sovereignty. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 7, becoming untouchable. There comes a moment when you realize nothing external can reach you anymore. Not because you've built walls, but because you've dissolved them. You no longer exist as a surface for projections to cling to. You've become clear, a mirror that reflects but absorbs nothing. Their judgments arrive and pass like wind over still water. You don't fight them, you don't defend yourself, and you don't explain. You observe. This is power in its purest psychological form. Awareness without attachment. Jung called it the self in alignment with consciousness, when the fragments of personality integrate into a single, unshakable presence. You've walked through fire long enough to know that pain was never the enemy. Identification was. Now, when others speak, you listen without losing yourself. You no longer mistake understanding for agreement or empathy for surrender. You sense where you end and the world begins. That invisible boundary that once felt fragile now feels divine. People still project their shadows, still test your silence, but you don't react. You recognize. Their words no longer infect you because there's nothing left inside that believes them. You've transcended the need to be seen, and in doing so, you've become visible in a new way. Calm, radiant, untouchable. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. This is what psychological freedom feels like. when the mind no longer echoes but emanates, when the self no longer hides but breathes. And in this silence, you find a strange beauty. Everything that once hurt you now serves you. You've become the alchemist of your own psyche, transforming poison into power, shadow into light. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Numire 8, the inner voice returns. At first, it's almost too quiet. The silence feels foreign, like standing in a room you once feared, but now recognize as home. Then, faintly, you hear it. Not the chatter of thoughts, not the borrowed noise of other minds, but something older, softer, more deliberate. Your inner voice. It doesn't speak in words at first. It hums beneath your awareness like a pulse, reminding you that you're alive and untouched. Jung said the psyche heals through dialogue with itself. This is that conversation beginning again. You ask and the silence answers. You move and your intuition moves with you. For so long you doubted your instincts, mistaking them for danger because others told you to. But now you listen, and it feels like remembering a song you used to know by heart. The voice doesn't flatter you, it tells you truth. It doesn't comfort, it clarifies. It becomes a compass that no one can tamper with. You begin to live guided by resonance, not reaction. What drains you, you leave. What ignites you, you follow. The world keeps talking, but it no longer dictates your tempo. You no longer speak to be understood, you speak to be real. And when you fall silent again, it's not emptiness, it's alignment. The mind that once echoed is now tuned. The heart that once trembled is steady. This is not a return to who you were, it's a return to who you've always been beneath the noise. The inner voice is not loud because it doesn't need to compete, it simply knows. And the more you trust it, the quieter everything else becomes. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 9, the untouchable mind. The final stage is not loud. It's not a triumph you can show off. It's a stillness so complete that noise can no longer reach it. Your mind has become untouchable, not because it's hardened, but because it's transparent. Thoughts pass through like light through glass. They leave no mark. You don't cling to praise. You don't bleed from criticism. The ego that once flinched at every word has been absorbed back into consciousness, its edges softened by understanding. You observe your own mind with clinical compassion, each thought a visitor, each emotion a passing weather system. Jung called this the realization of the self, when the center of gravity moves from reaction to awareness. Now you see life not as a battle of meaning, but as a play of energy. You know that most people speak from their wounds, not their wisdom. You listen without absorption, respond without attachment. Their words no longer carry hooks because there's nothing left in you for them to catch. Your peace isn't fragile, it's rooted in truth. You no longer seek silence as escape. You are silence moving through sound. This is freedom, to be in the world but not of its noise, to feel without losing yourself, to witness your own mind without fear. You've become your own analyst, your own sanctuary, your own cure. Nothing external defines you now because you've met the one thing that never changes, the awareness that sees it all. And in that seeing, you realize something profound. You were never broken. You were only buried beneath voices that were never yours. Now you stand clear, weightless, awake. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 9, the untouchable mind. The final stage is not loud. It's not a triumph you can show off. It's a stillness so complete that noise can no longer reach it. Your mind has become untouchable, not because it's hardened, but because it's transparent. Thoughts pass through like light through glass. They leave no mark. You don't cling to praise, you don't bleed from criticism. The ego that once flinched at every word has been absorbed back into consciousness, its edges softened by understanding. You observe your own mind with clinical compassion, each thought a visitor, each emotion a passing weather system. Jung called this the realization of the self, when the center of gravity moves from reaction to awareness. Now you see life not as a battle of meaning, but as a play of energy. You know that most people speak from their wounds, not their wisdom. You listen without absorption, Respond without attachment. Their words no longer carry hooks because there's nothing left in you for them to catch. Your peace isn't fragile, it's rooted in truth. You no longer seek silence as escape. You are silence moving through sound. This is freedom, to be in the world but not of its noise, to feel without losing yourself, to witness your own mind without fear. You've become your own analyst, your own sanctuary, your own cure. Nothing external defines you now because you've met the one thing that never changes, the awareness that sees it all. And in that seeing, you realize something profound. You were never broken. You were only buried beneath voices that were never yours. Now you stand clear, weightless, awake. Comment, I reclaim my voice. Number 10, the final descent, silence is power. In the end, there is only silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of completion. The noise of the world continues, the chatter of minds hungry for validation, the endless echo of borrowed truths, but none of it enters you now. You've descended into the quiet center of your being, and from here the world sounds distant, almost kind. Jung said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off parts of yourself, but by embracing them all. You've done that. You've gathered your fragments, faced your shadows, buried your mass, and what remains is pure presence. This silence is not weakness, it's power restrained. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove, argue, or defend, because it simply is. You've become the still point in a spinning world, the eye of your own storm. Every voice that once ruled you now fades into background static. The voice that remains, your voice, speaks rarely, but when it does, the world listens. You understand now that silence is not the opposite of sound. It's the master of it. It's the foundation beneath every word that matters. You live differently now, not reacting, but responding, not chasing, but allowing, not absorbing, but creating. The mind that once fractured under pressure has become the mirror of awareness itself. Clear, vast, untouchable. And as you breathe in this new quiet, you realize, this is not the end of transformation. This is its continuation through stillness. You've reclaimed your voice by no longer needing to use it to survive. You've become the echo of truth itself. Comment, I reclaim my voice. And remember, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this voice, your voice, must stay awake.